We see that most igneous rocks are made up of silicate minerals instead of non-silicate minerals. And that's because silicon and oxygen are the two most abundant elements in magma, the same way that they're the two most abundant elements inside of our crust. But those 6 other elements we see in our crust are also found a lot in our igneous rocks. And they make up about 98% of most magmas on our planet. But like we saw before, there are trace amounts of other elements in our crust. There are also trace amounts of other elements in our igneous rocks as well. And we're going to see that as we are looking at crystallization, as that lava is cooling down and turning into a solid rock, that these different elements are going to form 2 major groups of silicate minerals, felsic and mafic igneous rocks. When we're looking at our mafic silicates, these are generally going to be dark in color because they have a lot of iron and magnesium in them. They don't really have a lot of silica. So this leads to them having a very high density. They're going to feel very heavy. But the second major type that we have are our felsic silicates. These are lighter in color, and they're also lighter weight. And they're going to contain our salty elements like potassium, sodium, and calcium. And they also have a lot of silica inside of them. They're a lower density because they don't have those metals and instead have the salty elements. But because this is earth science, we have to make it a little bit more complicated than just dark and mafic or light and felsic. In actuality, we have 4 different ways that we can define an igneous rock based on its color and the density of the minerals inside of it. Again, felsic means it's light in color and it's lightweight. Mafic means it's dark in color and it's heavier. But we also have a category called intermediate. And this is directly in between a light felsic and a dark heavy mafic. It's both light and dark. It's intermediate. But our 4th type is called ultramafic. And these are incredibly dense rocks because they're made out of almost entirely iron and magnesium, those really heavy metals. But with these ultramafic rocks, they're kind of weird because instead of being light or dark in color, they're green. So our 4 chemical compositions of our igneous rocks are light and felsic, intermediate, where it's both light and dark, our dark mafics, and then finally our green ultramafics. So we're going to go over all 4 of those in just a little bit more detail. Again, our felsic rocks are light in color because they're made up of those light colored silicate minerals, the ones that are made out of salt elements. So in addition to being light in color, they're also light in weight and density. They're made up of those 2 most common minerals on our planet, feldspar and quartz. And the most common felsic igneous rock that we see is called granite. So sometimes these are also called granitic igneous rocks, but I mostly just refer to them as felsic. But even though these felsic rocks are supposed to be light in color, they can contain up to 10% mafic or dark colored minerals. So they don't have to be entirely, let's say, white or beige. They can have little bits here and there of darker colored minerals as well and still be felsic. And the reason why these are called felsic rocks are because they're made up of that mineral feldspar and other silicates, or silicas. But probably the most important thing to know about felsic minerals, other than the fact that they're light in color and lightweight, is the fact that they make up most of the continental crust on our planet. And this will become important next chapter. But we also have those mafic igneous rocks. And these are the ones that are dark in color, and they're going to be a lot heavier and denser than felsic rocks. And that's because they're made up of iron and magnesium, which is what gives it the name mafic. Mafic stands for magnesium plus ferrum, which is a fancy word for iron. But just like before, we're going to see that the majority of the minerals in these mafic rocks are dark in color, but we can have some lighter colored minerals in there as well. And then we have those intermediate igneous rocks, the ones that are in between felsic and mafic. These are going to have a combination, usually about a 50-50 ratio, of light and dark colored minerals inside of it. Just like this image we see here of being about 50-50 light and dark. But most of these intermediate igneous rocks are coming from volcanic eruptions around our continents that generally produce very violent volcanic eruptions. And we'll come back to this in 2 more chapters from now. But our fourth major type are those ultramafic rocks. These are mostly green in color because they're almost entirely made out of iron, which is green. These ultramafic rocks are actually super rare at Earth's surface because they form in the mantle of our planet. So we need some kind of geological process to happen to pull these ultramafic rocks to the surface where we can actually see them, because they form deep inside of the Earth.